Hey everyone, it's Jimmy from Internal here, and today I'm going to show you how to use the bulk import component to create a bulk action. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to bulk update a bunch of scooter records using this CSV file that I have open in a Google Sheet here that contains, updated battery level, firmware, and status of a bunch of scooters that we want to upload. So let's get into it and show you how we do it. So we already have our table dropped into our space. So what we want to do is add a bulk import component. And then here we're going to select our database that contains the corresponding function that we want to do here. And what we want to do is update the scooters record. And then let's just have this button say bulk update, so it's clear that you're not just updating a single record. And then after this action is completed, what we wanted to do is refresh the scooters table. So we'll see all that new data come through here. And so let's go over to the fields and kind of configure where all of this data is coming from. So the first field is the ID. You'll notice that you can't remove this because this is a required field. Because we're updating a bunch of records, we'll need to know what the ID or the primary key of the correct record to update is. And so what we'll say is the value that we want to use here, and you'll see this option appear because this is a bulk import, is to obtain this value from a CSV or a TSV file. So let's select that option here and click done. But that just tells us, what is the ID of the record that we want to update. We also want to update a bunch of different fields. So for example, we want to update the battery level field. We also want to take that value from our CSV file. And then let's also update the firmware version, also coming from our CSV file. Let's update the status as well. And then finally, let's also change the updated at. So we want this figure to be accurate here. But instead of pulling it from the file, let's actually set this to the date and time that this button is clicked. So what we've done here basically is said we are going to grab a bunch of these values for the battery level, firmware version, status from the CSV file, but the updated at field will be set to the date and the time that the button is clicked. So when the user goes to import this file, that's going to be the time that will be recorded under the updated at column. So let's hit apply and let's publish this space quickly. And so that's it. You've created the space. Now let's go in. Let's exit the edit mode. Take a look at using this space and see what you would do to actually go through and bulk update. So a user could go click the bulk update button. Then they can select a file here. Let's grab our updated scooters file. And in this next step, what you can do is map to the fields in your system. So you'll see there's a drop down above each of the columns that were grabbed from your CSV that you can then map to the fields for your function. So in this case, for a function that updates a specific record, we want the ID column to match with the ID column here. Our CSV calls this column bat level, but the field name is actually battery level. We'll actually leave the serial numbers alone because we don't actually want to change those from the existing ones. But then we'll set the status to be equal to the status, and then firmware version to go with the firmware column. And now that everything here looks good, we can go to the next step, which is to review. And so at this stage, internal will just kind of check to make sure that everything looks right. There may be some errors that are detected in the case of, a required field may not have anything filled out in the CSV, or maybe a particular column type doesn't match with what the value is from the file. Internal will let you know about any potential conflicts here that you can then resolve. And then you can just go ahead and click import. And it will import all of the data that you have. If it's successful, you'll see that all of the rows were completed successfully. If any rows fail to import, you'll actually get a CSV that you can download that will show all of the data that hasn't actually been imported, so that you can then go and resolve that later on yourself. Now that we click close here, you can see that all of the new updated values for the battery level, firmware version are all in here and have come from those same figures in our CSV file. And so that's it. That's how to set up a quick and easy bulk update.